Like a curse, the memory of the night that changed my life forever gapes in the depths of my mind, like a well full of icy water, where the shadows of the departed splash. I, Elias Faulkner, once a respected surgeon, am now but a shadow of my former glory, a ghost wandering the labyrinths of madness, where the whispers of despair drown out any hope of redemption. My nightmare began in the town of Brokenwood, once a thriving center of trade, now just a collection of dilapidated buildings and forgotten faces. I arrived there at the invitation of my old friend, Dr. Caleb Westwood, a man as brilliant as he was eccentric. Caleb was consumed by his work, treating rare neurological disorders, and his reputation, despite his reclusive lifestyle, had spread far beyond Brokenwood. I found Caleb in his gloomy, crumbling clinic, located on the outskirts of town. The building was shrouded in cobwebs and overgrown with ivy, as if nature itself sought to hide it from view. Inside, chaos reigned. Stacks of medical journals piled on the tables, vials of medicine littered the floor, and the air was saturated with the acrid smell of ether and a strange, earthy dampness. Caleb, gaunt and pale, greeted me with a feverish gleam in his eyes. "Elias, my friend," he exclaimed, clasping my hand. "I'm so glad you came. I need your help, your knowledge, your impeccable hand." I inquired as to what the matter was, and Caleb, lowering his voice to a whisper, told me about his latest patient. A young woman named Amelia, suffering from a rare form of catatonic stupor. She was completely devoid of movement and speech, her consciousness, it seemed, locked in an impenetrable dungeon. Caleb had tried all the known methods of treatment, but to no avail. Amelia remained in a motionless state, her face a frozen mask, her eyes, wide open but devoid of life, staring into the void. "I'm sure, Elias, that her consciousness is alive, buried beneath a layer of organic dysfunction," Caleb said, his voice trembling with excitement. "I feel it, I believe I can free her, but I need help. I need your courage to do what no one has ever done." At that moment, I should have left. I should have fled from this place, from this madman and his spectral patient. But my professional curiosity, my pride as a surgeon, succumbed to temptation. I agreed to stay and assist Caleb in his risky experiment. For several days, I studied Amelia's medical history, her test results, her neurological indicators. Everything suggested that her condition was hopeless. But Caleb was relentless. He had developed a new, radical procedure, a neurosurgical intervention aimed at stimulating certain areas of the brain, supposedly responsible for consciousness and speech. The procedure was extremely risky, almost insane. It required incredible precision and composure. But Caleb was obsessed with the idea of bringing Amelia back to life, of snatching her from the clutches of catatonia. The day of the operation arrived. We prepared the operating room, a gloomy chamber lit only by the dim light of a kerosene lamp. Amelia lay on the operating table, her face as pale as linen, her breathing shallow and uneven. Caleb, clad in a blood-stained gown, stood beside the table, a fanatical fire burning in his eyes. He held a scalpel in his hand, his movements confident and precise. I stood nearby, handing him instruments, and felt a cold sweat creep down my spine. The atmosphere in the room was saturated with tension and fear. It seemed that death itself hovered in the air, waiting its turn. Caleb began the operation. He made incisions with incredible accuracy, penetrating deeper and deeper into Amelia's brain. I watched his actions with horror and admiration. He was a true virtuoso, a master of his craft. Several hours passed. The operation was in full swing. Suddenly, at the moment when Caleb was performing a particularly delicate manipulation, the light in the room went out. Everything plunged into complete darkness. I felt my heart beat wildly in my chest. I heard only Caleb's heavy breathing and the faint, uneven drip of blood falling on the floor. "Caleb, what happened?" I asked, my voice trembling. "I don't know," Caleb replied, his voice strained. "The lamp must have burned out. Wait, I'll light a new one." He began to fumble in the dark, searching for matches. I stood motionless, gripped by a sticky fear. It seemed that time had stopped. Finally, Caleb found the matches and lit a new lamp. A dim, flickering light illuminated the room. I looked at Amelia and froze in horror. Her eyes were open, and in them, for the first time in a long time, there was life. But it wasn't the life we had hoped to restore to her. It was a life filled with madness, suffering, and unspeakable horror. Her lips parted, and from them escaped a hoarse, inhuman shriek that froze the blood in my veins. She tried to sit up on the operating table, her body convulsing. "Caleb, what have you done?" I shouted, overcome with panic. Caleb recoiled from the table, his face distorted with horror. I don't know," he whispered. "I just wanted to help her." Amelia continued to scream, her cry growing louder and more unbearable. She tried to tear the bandages from her head, her hands trembling like leaves in the wind. Suddenly, she fell silent. Her body went limp, her eyes closed. She sank back into a catatonic state. We stood, thunderstruck, not knowing what to do. Caleb was paler than death, his hands shaking. "We have to do something," I said, trying to remain calm. "We have to stop the bleeding, give her a sedative." Caleb nodded and began frantically searching for the necessary medications. I began to examine the wound on Amelia's head. At the moment when I approached her face, she suddenly opened her eyes. In her eyes, I saw not just madness, I saw something much worse, something inhuman, something sinister. And then I heard a voice that came from her throat, but that did not belong to her. A voice that was full of malice, hatred, and ancient, unfathomable darkness. "You awakened me," the voice croaked. I recoiled from the table, gripped by a horror that I had never experienced before. I realized what we had done. We had not simply brought Amelia back to life, we had unleashed something terrible, something that had been sleeping in the depths of her mind, something that should never have awakened. Caleb, hearing the voice, froze in place, holding a syringe with a sedative. His face was contorted with unspeakable fear. "Caleb, run," I shouted. "Run from here before it's too late." But Caleb didn't move, he was paralyzed by horror. Amelia, possessed by an unclean spirit, began to slowly rise from the table. Her movements were unnatural, jerky, like a puppet being manipulated by an invisible puppeteer. She turned to face us, and I saw that her face had changed. It had become distorted, ugly, inhuman. Her eyes burned with hellish fire, her lips stretched into a malicious, insane grin. "You will pay," the voice growled. And then the slaughter began. Amelia, possessed, pounced on us with incredible speed and strength. She was like a demon unleashed from hell. Caleb tried to defend himself, but Amelia was too strong. She grabbed him by the throat and squeezed with her bony fingers. Caleb gasped, his eyes bulging from their sockets. I tried to help Caleb, but Amelia threw me aside like a feather. I hit my head against the wall and lost consciousness. When I awoke, the room was silent. I lay on the floor, covered in blood. My head was throbbing with pain. I got to my feet and looked around. The scene that met my eyes was horrifying. Caleb's body lay on the floor, his throat torn open. His eyes were wide open, with horror frozen in them. Amelia was nowhere to be found. In horror, I ran out of the clinic. I ran without looking back, ran from this cursed place, ran from the nightmare that I myself had awakened. I ran until I reached the nearest town. I told the local sheriff everything that had happened, but he didn't believe me. He thought I was a madman, a crazy doctor who had imagined it all. I knew he wouldn't believe me. I knew that no one would believe me. After all, who would believe that an ordinary woman could be possessed by a demon? The sheriff ordered me to be taken to a mental asylum. There I spent many months, surrounded by madmen and lost souls. The doctors tried to treat me, but their medicines and treatments didn't help. The nightmare did not recede. It haunted me in my sleep and in my waking hours. I knew that Amelia, or what was left of her, was still at large. I knew that she was wandering the world, seeking new victims, sowing terror and destruction. I tried to warn people, to tell them about the danger that threatened them, but no one listened to me. I was considered a madman, a crazy person who could not be trusted. And so now I am here, in this lonely room, writing these lines, hoping that someone will one day read them and believe me. I know that my story sounds implausible, insane. But I swear, everything I have written is true. I saw it with my own eyes, I lived through this nightmare, and it will haunt me until my death. I know that my death is near. I feel its breath on my neck. I know that Amelia will come for me. She will come to take my soul, to plunge me forever into the abyss of madness and despair. But I am not afraid of death. I am afraid of what awaits me after it. I am afraid of what may lurk in the depths of my soul, the darkness that may be even more terrible than the one I saw in Amelia's eyes. I am dying in terror, in loneliness, in despair. My life was meaningless, my efforts were futile. I have only awakened a darkness that should have slept an eternal sleep. Farewell, world. Farewell, hopes. Farewell, memories. Darkness consumes me, and may the day be cursed when I first stepped through the door of Dr. Caleb Westwood's clinic.